The NBA at this point is undoubtedly a year-round league that is on fire 365 24/7. As just 2 weeks after the finals, already, we've seen Bradley Beal get traded to the Suns for CP3, Landry Shamet, and some pick swaps. And this trade is pretty shocking, it's also pretty odd, as Kevin Durant gets his 4th big 3 of his career, Bradley Beal escapes DC, and Chris Paul yet again is passed around the NBA like a mid-tier IG model. Now, looking at Bradley Beal, the 3-time All-Star, the biggest part of this trade, my first reaction to him getting traded, it was meh, okay, Bradley Beal got traded. And when I saw it was the Suns, him going to Phoenix, it's the last place I want him to be. And don't get me wrong, Beal, he's a very good player, an above average scorer who's pretty efficient. But when it comes to a team like the Suns as presently constituted, Beal's skill set for this team doesn't really raise their ceiling nearly as much as it should. As if you put Beal in the Heat, his impact for that team scoring-wise is 10 times more than for this Suns team. The way I look at it, Phoenix already had 2 Lamborghinis, and for some reason went out and got a 3rd. At some point, too much of a good thing isn't a good thing. And paying 3 score-first players $130 million combined isn't the greatest move I would make. And you gotta ask yourself, looking at NBA history, where is a team that has 3 score-first players ever won a championship? In recent history, have there been any teams that did this and failed miserably? Let's think. Oh yeah, the Brooklyn Nets with KD, Kyrie, and James Harden. Debatably, the most disappointing super team in NBA history. And I can already hear some of you guys, well, with the Suns, it's going to be different. I hear you guys, but let me just explain once again. Look at KD and Beal and their track record. KD in 2021, in a shortened season, missed 37 games. 2022, missed 27, and this year, 35. And in each of the past 2 postseasons, versus Boston and Denver, defensive teams have had much more success guarding Kevin Durant and almost nerfing his scoring ability. And looking at someone like Beal, he also is no stranger to missing games, as in 2022, he missed 42, and this year, 32. And look, it's pretty shocking for Beal. The last time in his career he won a playoff series was in 2017 versus the Atlanta Hawks. That, in terms of NBA time, is ancient history. And look, I'm not going to lie to you guys, I haven't watched maybe 5-10 Wizards games over the past 2 years. But looking at Beal as a player this past year, averaging 23.2 points, it was a pretty good scoring season. But for a score-first player, whose scoring is his best trait, it's alright. As for the entire NBA, he ranked 32nd in scoring. And as you guys know, 20 points a day isn't the same as in 2008. As in today's league, there's a whopping 57, yes, 57 players who average 20 points per game. And in addition to being injury prone, over the past 2 years, Beal went from averaging 30 down to 23. That for a guy who's only 29, about to turn 30, it's a pretty glaring sign looking back at NBA history. Do you think Bradley Beal, a guy who was in the back end of his prime, being the 3rd option behind 2 score-first players, is really that great of a trade? In my view, at best, it's a B-. And once again, to nail my point home, scoring last year wasn't Phoenix's problem, as in the playoffs, they averaged a whopping 114.2 points per game. That for the playoffs ranked 4th overall, and for teams that made it out of the first round, it ranked 1st. Now on the flip side, defensively, they're almost the complete opposite, as their defensive rating was an abysmal 119.4. Out of all playoff teams, that ranked 14th out of 16. And versus Denver, why they lost, it's pretty simple. They had nobody who could stop Jokic or at least limit him on offense, as Joker in this series averaged a 35-point triple-double got anything he wanted at the basket and around the rim. When you have Jock Landale playing serious minutes versus Jokic, you're not winning that series unless KD and Booker have 100 points every single game. And looking ahead to this year, do you think Phoenix realistically can get some perimeter player who can stop LeBron James, Anthony Davis, Jokic, Murray, Kawhi, even Luka? I don't see any player on their roster or any player they can get who can stop those guys or at least limit them. And for Bradley Beal, his defensive impact, defensive play, it's one of the worst, the best high volume scorers. As since his rookie year, his defensive plus minus has been in the negatives every single year. What you're going to get in Phoenix is a 48-50 win team that's just fantastic on offense, they're injury prone, and defensively in the bottom 25%. The biggest thing I want to see and I'm interested in is Devin Booker running the point guard and having the ball in his hands virtually every possession. For him individually, I think next year could be his best season of his career. And for someone like Kevin Durant, I expect 25-26 points on above 50% shooting. And then Bradley Beal, he's a solid 20, nothing special, not great defensively, and spot-up shooting, it'll be hit or miss. When it comes down to it, this Phoenix Suns team still has tons of holes. And going all in on offense and ignoring defense, it's the track record for that, it's not great in NBA history. Now, looking at Kevin Durant, their biggest superstar, most popular star, the pressure for him next year has been cranked up for a 10 all the way to 11. As yet again, he has a big three that at minimum should be in the West Finals and possibly the NBA Finals. And looking at KD's career at this point, when it comes to Hall of Fame help, outside of the Bill Russell Celtics, I don't think any player has had more help than Durant. And if he finally calls it quits and retires by 2027, 2028, and only has 2 championships, both from Golden State, the narrative for him has been the same as always been. He's a great player, a great scorer, but minus Steph Curry, even with great teammate help, this guy simply can't get it done. Fair or unfair, that narrative is going to follow Kevin Durant until he wins his 3rd championship. And looking at Golden State, their offensive big three of KD, Curry, and Klay, why it was so fantastic is each of those guys fit their game and they complemented a well-rounded team. Phoenix isn't well-rounded, and Booker and Beal aren't Curry and Klay, as both the Splash Brothers could play off the ball, dominate without dribbling, and above all else, were unselfish players. Not saying Beal and Booker are selfish, but Klay and Curry's mentality, it was championship or bust every single year. And for KD on the Suns, unlike Golden State, for this team in Phoenix, he's going to be asked to be an elite defender on the perimeter and in the post. At 35-1-36, do you think KD's defensive impact is really that impactful? For me personally, I really don't think it is. And looking at KD's biggest critic, that of course is Charles Barkley. And Barkley today, I can't imagine what he's thinking. What I'm sure he's saying is that once again Kevin Durant has a stacked team and Chuck is proven right yet again. And for those guys' beef, they've gone back and forth in the past, and Durant called out Chuck for having quote-unquote a lot of teammate help. Durant at this point, he can't talk trash to Chuck ever again. This guy's stacked teams, OKC, Golden State, Brooklyn, now Phoenix. If Charles Barkley had his help, at worst, he'd be a top 15 player in NBA history with multiple rings. And if somehow this Suns team actually wins the championship, shuts up everyone, again, KD did it with his super team and a big three. And that's why constantly building super teams, getting traded, it's hard to escape that narrative and prove the doubters wrong. Now, looking back at the actual trade, I'll restate, I'm not a big fan of it. I'd say probably a C+, C-, B- grade at the highest. but it's not an A+, and it's far from a home run, as what Phoenix should try to do is get a legit defensive big man who doesn't need the basketball, or a 3-and-D player like Mikal Bridges or Cam Johnson. And looking at Washington with CP3, I doubt anyone cares about it, but Chris Paul at this point, his quest for a ring, it's getting pretty bleak. And for Washington, I highly doubt he plays 1 second in a Wizards uniform. So that right there is the end of the video. Once again, to sum it up, I think getting Bradley Beal, it's like getting the biggest fish in a small pond. It makes it better, but not that much better. As always, thank you guys for watching, hope you enjoyed it. I'll see you next time.